to me, it was heartbreaking, and more was the guiltiness in my heart, in my mind built, because seeing many of my peers and closest allies were in jail, but at the same time I fled Hong Kong, and I felt really guilty when I took on the flight.
In 2021, 47 people in Hong Kong were arrested and charged under the national security law with conspiracy to commit subversion after they organized primaries in a bid to win the 2020 legislative election. They are accused of planning to exercise legislative powers to veto bills and force the resignation of the chief executive. Among 47, 16 pleaded not guilty, while 31 pleaded guilty, and most of them have been detained since 2021, awaiting for their trial. And on Thursday, May 30th, 3 judges chosen by Beijing declared that 14 of the 16 defendants are guilty of conspiracy to commit subversion in the biggest national security trial in the city's judicial history. The convictions sent a clear message to the world. The Chinese and the Hong Kong governments will stop at nothing to oppress any form of civil disobedience, even the peaceful participation in the legislature. You're listening to The Divide. My name is Iris Xu, and today's story is about Hong Kongers' collective determination and courage to fight for their freedom.
I'm Carmen Lau. I'm the International and Advocacy and Program Associate at HKDC, and I am also a former elected district councillor in Hong Kong.
Carmen Lau is a Hong Kong activist who is currently living in exile in the UK. After studying government and public administration at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Carmen served as the legislative assistant to one of the pro-democratic legislators. And during the 2019 pro-democracy movement, Carmen herself was elected as a district councillor. And many of her friends and allies are now behind bars.
One of the evidence that the courts used to try to convince the courts that they are guilty was that in the primary, some of them, they signed a pledge stating that they would use the veto power which were given by the law that as a legislative councillor they could use to veto the budget of the government if the government did not respond to any of the 5 demands that protesters raised during the 2019 Hong Kong movement.
It sounded like normal legislative activities that were guaranteed by the Basic Law, Hong Kong's mini-constitution. But all of a sudden, these activities became illegal crimes.
There's no rationale. It's completely legitimate democratic exercise. I think the government didn't like it just because, those people are participating in a genuine democratic process. They try to win election, and they know they have popular support. And the government was very scared of that kind of democratic exercise. So there's no real rationale. It's just because the government doesn't like democracy, and they are afraid of those people who have popular support. My name is Yaqiu Wang. I'm the research director for China at Freedom House.
Yaqiu Wang is a human rights activist and researcher who's been watching Hong Kong closely. And she's here to help me understand what the biggest national security trial in Hong Kong is all about.
It's a very diverse group of people. The youngest is in their early 20s, and the oldest is in their late 60s. So basically, in 2019, the group people, they all came from very different backgrounds. Some are nurse, social worker, business people, politicians. So at that time, Hong Kong still had a legislation that was much more meaningful than the current rubber stamp legislation. So the group of people, they wanted to win elections, so they got together and conducted an informal poll to decide who is going to run from the pro-democracy camp. So basically, they put them forward, and they ask the general population to vote. If pick one who represent the pro-democracy camp, who would have a bigger chance winning in the general election. So that's basically is what they did. I mean, it's a completely legitimate activity. I mean, in the U.S. where I live, obviously, the Democrats come up with one candidate, the Republicans come up with one candidate, and who is going to be the one candidate represent the party? Then they have their own, primary election before the formal election. That basically is what the 47 people did. And then at the time, the government were saying, by conduct this informal poll, public opinion poll, they were committing subversion acts.
As Yaqiu explains what constitutes subversion of state, according to the Hong Kong government, I'm wondering how the Hong Kongers are reacting to the convictions.
I think people all kind of expected this to happen because, anybody who's been charged on national security law, most of them have been convicted. Despite it's been expected, but it's still 47, 31 already were pleaded guilty, and for the rest of the 16, 14 were convicted. It does still send a message that, any real exercise of democracy is being seen as a challenge to the Hong Kong government, which now is basically, the puppet of Beijing. The crime it carries the maximum sentence of life in prison. Of course, it sounds, very intimidating and threatening, and people, the general public, hear this message, they get it. The message is that don't even dare, to exercise your right to vote, your basic, human rights. And if you do it, if you dare to challenge the power of Beijing, that is the result.
And here's Carmen Lau speaking about the impact that these convictions could have on Hong Kongers.
After the enforcement of the national security law, and also early this year, there were the enactment of the Article 23, which is a homegrown national security law in Hong Kong, has definitely silenced Hong Kongers inside Hong Kong and also abroad. Because it has posed a chilling effect among Hong Kongers, simply because the cases, not only the 47, but also many cases with national security law, has stated clearly that Hong Kongers cannot comment or post anything which may not be aligned with the lines of the Hong Kong government, and such oppression, such restriction, pose fear inside the community that as if freedom of speech and freedom of expression are no longer exist in Hong Kong and also abroad for Hong Kongers. You can see from how the Hong Kong government issue arrest warrant with bounties to Hong Kong diaspora, to activists in exile. These sort of moves and behaviors that violating our own basic rights has silenced the Hong Kongers and also posed a sense of fears amongst the community inside Hong Kong. And you could see that society in Hong Kong now, there's basically no dissident voices are heard.
According to Carmen, many Hong Kongers living outside of Hong Kong are also feeling the pressure.
Because the government has posted arrest warrants to many activists, or relatively outspoken voices, and also the Hong Kong government harassed their family back in Hong Kong, and these moves has really posed impact on the Hong Kong diaspora, because many of them actually would somehow travel back to Hong Kong to visit their families, and many, including myself, still have families back in Hong Kong. And if they see activists overseas are being treated this way under the national security law, they will proceed, and also resonates the sense of fears among general Hong Kongers overseas as well. And it's apparently we could see less and less Hong Kongers attending protests or rallies overseas, no matter it's in the UK or in the US. And also, even if they are present in the protests, they would also cover their face or trying to hide their identity, because the transnational repression is growing overseas. You can see now we have spies in the Hong Kong community. We have surveillance happen to not only the outspoken activists, but also general Hong Kongers. So there's been rising concern of this kind of repression.
And Carmen herself has been a victim of this type of transnational harassment and repression.
Firstly, not long after I went into exile and make an announcement that I went into exile, I was wanted by the Hong Kong government. Although I don't have a bounty on my head so far, but I was wanted by the Hong Kong government under the ICAC. And last year, when I was in San Francisco with my colleagues, HKDC colleagues, we organized protests along with Tibetan community and also Uyghur community during the APEC summit. We organized a protest against Xi Jinping, and at the protest scenes, I was beaten up by the Chinese supporters, and I was physically being beaten up and being pulled hair by the Chinese. And Anna Kwok, our director, received death threats ahead of the protest, and my colleague camera was also being damaged by people. And also after the protest, we were being tailed and shadowed.
With Chinese government's audacious use of violence on people protesting outside of its borders, will the Hong Kongers keep up their 3-decade-long tradition of commemorating the anniversary of the June 4th Tiananmen massacre?
Doing it publicly has become so dangerous. They first banned it in 2020, citing COVID restrictions. Then, 2021, they also banned it. Then a few people who were the organizers and even the participants, they have been, charged under national security law, charged for illegal assembly, and, they're currently in prison. So that is obvious a message that don't do it. If you do it again, you can go to prison too. That being said, public showing that, of commemoration is very dangerous. That being said, people are going to do it in their own private ways. You can light a candle in your own home. Other people don't know. You can have a little gathering in your living room with your friends to commemorate. I absolutely think that people will do it in, more discreet way, but they are going to do it. Tiananmen now it's the 35th years. It has been banned in China for 35 years. And, every year, it's that is the day. People remember it. They know they can't show it publicly. They know they cannot criticize, cannot talk about it on the internet. But by having private conversations with people remember it. People remember that day in their own way.
Besides banning the June 4th vigil that usually takes place in Victoria Park in Hong Kong, earlier this year, the Hong Kong government has quickly passed another set of national security law under Article 23 of the Basic Law.
It's very interesting that, the national security law that was imposed by Beijing on June 30th, 2020, already was so broad that anything can constitute as endangering national security, right? Like anything you do, as long as the government says, oh, you're endangering the national security, then you go to the court, the entire court, the judges are picked by Beijing anyway. So what's the point? I have another national security law, which is, the homegrown one rather than the one that is imposed by Beijing, Article 23. Like people wonder what's the point. It really shows that Hong Kong government is just so insecure that it needs to have a layer after another layer of national security law, that they just need all the tools, more and more tools to charge people under the framework of national security. I think it's not about how necessary the new law is. It says more about how insecure the government feels about the society, that it feels that I need more and more tools to suppress people. So that's why I'm having another law. Even the previous law already covers everything.
And it is this insecure Hong Kong government that is forcing Carmen Lau to go into exile.
I took on the flight just 1 week after I purchased the flight ticket. It was a really all of a sudden decision, and I didn't really tell people that I was leaving, and it was heartbreaking to me. Not long before I went into exile, I was forced to resign by the Hong Kong government from my position, and there was a lot that had yet to be done. And I used to work for one of the 47, and a few of them were my closest airlines and peers in the movement, not to mention many others had become political prisoners. To me, it was heartbreaking, and more was the guiltiness in my heart, in my mind built, because seeing many of my peers and closest allies were in jail, but at the same time I fled Hong Kong, and I felt really guilty when I took on the flight, and also to my family, because it wasn't their fault, but then they have to be apart with me, and it wasn't easy. But now I would say I'm also learning how to transform these kind of sadness, these grievances, and these guiltiness to movement. Seeing that so many Hong Kongers abroad, although they are in the same situation as I do, but seeing them continue to contribute to the Hong Kong diaspora and contribute to our movement, I must say I still have hope inside myself that we all could go back to Hong Kong someday.
Thank you for listening. This episode of The Divide is produced by Radio Taiwan International.